Bonjour and welcome back to another episode of T.E.D Mini, where together we'll be learning about technology, engineering and design. I'm Serena, and in today's episode we'll be exploring the next stages of planning, selection and preparation of the design process. In the last video we spoke about how to create an initial project proposal with which you can present your project to the stakeholders for approval. After this presentation, you may find you need to modify your design, brief or specifications and make another project proposal presentation to the stakeholders. Once all of that is done and the chosen idea is approved by the stakeholders, we come to the next step, which we will be discussing in this video. Today's video will be divided into 4 sections. These are 1. The material selection, 2. The scientific testing, 3. The cutting lists or part list, and 4. The time plan. Let's start with section 1, the material selection. The first thing we need to tackle after the chosen idea is approved for construction is the selection of our materials. All of the materials, components, fixtures and fittings must be chosen based on 4 key areas. These 4 key areas are the final finish you want to achieve, their cost, their availability, and finally their suitability. Their suitability will depend on many factors, which depend on yourself and your other choices. Keep in mind that for each material you choose, you will need the appropriate tools and skills to cut or manipulate them. You must also make sure that the materials, fixtures and fittings go well together. You wouldn't want to use a chipboard screw to attach a brass hinge to a 3mm sheet of acrylic or it would crack. You must also take into consideration how the proposed materials are going to stand up to the environment you will be subjecting them to. You wouldn't expect an unfinished piece of pine wood to be the best materials to use for a seaside bench, as the water would damage it very quickly. A set of scientific tests can be performed on your materials to check if they are fit for purpose. And here is where we move on to section 2, the scientific tests. As in schools testing equipment is limited, simple tests can be performed. These include tests such as a melting point test to test for heat resistance, an IZ impact test to test how well a material absorbs energy and deforms without fracturing on impact, a hardness test to test how well a material resists deforming or scratching, a plasticity test to test how many times a material can be deformed repeatedly without fracturing, and finally an elasticity test to test how much a material can stretch or compress and still go back to its original shape. As regards to electronic components, the information we need can be acquired from datasheets, which can be normally found online for free. But testing components as part of a circuit can be done using software simulation. Moving on to section 3, we'll now talk about the cutting lists or part list. These are created to be given to manufacturers in the industrial environment, where the designer and manufacturer are generally 2 separate persons. In a school setting, it is normally us as designers who also assume the role of manufacturer with the help of the workshop technician or teacher, who will generally check our material quantity, selection and tolerances. A part list will contain the items required, the quantity, the sourcing unit or standard supply size, and the unit cost. If any of those parts will need cutting, a cutting list will need to be created. This will generally be a table containing the part name, the material you will need for that part, the thickness, length, and width of the material required for that part, and the quantity needed. If the materials you will be needing will be bought in bulk and supplied to you by the school, generally, a parts list, cutting list, or both will be required by the technician or teacher. The final section of this video revolves around the time plan. A time plan is a table with a list of processes that need to be performed one after the other in the process of building the product. For each process, an amount of time is allocated for how long that process is expected to take. The tools needed for that task are also listed, followed by a health and safety risk assessment for that particular task. And that will be all for this episode of T.E.D Mini. I hope you have enjoyed these few minutes together, and if you have any suggestions for how I can improve these videos, please leave a kind comment down below. I'm Serena, and if you have been, thanks for watching.